Last week, I had the chance to speak with a German energy engineer who had just returned from Burkina Faso. He said, I went there with the mindset of a Western expert who would advise them on buying wind turbines from Europe. But what I saw there left me stunned. Ibrahim Traoré and the people of Burkina Faso are building thousands of wind turbines with their own hands, at a cost that is just 1/15th of importing them. They are doing things we in Europe have never even dared to think about. The story he told me about this silent energy revolution is truly incredible. To understand why this project is so seismic, we must go back to the disastrous energy situation in Burkina Faso before Ibrahim Traoré came to power. Burkina Faso was once one of the countries with the lowest electricity access rates in the world. Only 20% of the population had access to the national grid, while the remaining 80% lived in darkness or depended on expensive and polluting diesel generators. Energy costs consumed up to 40% of the income of poor households, forcing millions to choose between electricity and food. The country's energy system was entirely dependent on imports. 85% of its electricity came from imported fossil fuels at exorbitant prices, while only 15% came from hydroelectric power that was precarious and dependent on the rainy season. Every year, Burkina Faso had to spend $600 million to import fuel and electricity, while its entire GDP was only $18 billion. This meant that 3.3% of its GDP went solely to paying foreign energy corporations. The electricity shortage paralyzed the economy. Factories had to shut down frequently, hospitals couldn't store vaccines, schools had no power for computers, and farmers couldn't pump water for irrigation. For decades, the World Bank and the IMF insisted that Western aid and the import of expensive technology were the only way to solve the energy crisis. They produced thick reports recommending that Burkina Faso take on more debt to buy wind turbines from Europe for $2 to $3 million apiece, along with binding long-term maintenance contracts. They were dead wrong, until Ibrahim Traoré appeared and completely changed the game. Ibrahim Traoré is not an energy engineer or a technology expert. Born in 1988, he is a young military officer with a bachelor's degree in geology, passionate about studying Burkina Faso's natural resources. Before coming to power, Traoré had spent years researching the country's wind potential, discovering that the arid lands everyone considered useless actually had powerful and stable winds year-round. He has a steadfast character, always puts the national interest first, and most importantly, has a deep belief in the capabilities of the Burkinabe people. When Traoré assumed the presidency in September 2022, his first message was simple yet resolute. We will light up Burkina Faso ourselves with the hands and minds of our people. No nation can thrive if it depends on outside energy. Unlike the empty promises of past politicians, Traoré had prepared a specific, scientific, and actionable plan. Phase 1, over the first 18 months, aimed to produce 200 wind turbines with a capacity of 100 megawatts using local materials and labor at a cost not exceeding $50 million instead of the $400 to $600 million it would cost to import them. The method included training 5,000 welders, mechanics, and technicians from rural villages, building production workshops with available materials, and using local iron ore to fabricate the turbine frames. The expected result was to provide electricity to 500,000 people and save $80 million in energy import costs. Phase 2, over the next 2 years, would build on this success to expand to an additional 600 turbines with 300 megawatts of capacity, covering 60% of the national electricity demand. The scaling method involved replicating the training model in 15 provinces, building 3 large-scale turbine manufacturing plants, and developing a complete domestic component supply chain. The anticipated challenges of quality control and logistics would be addressed by a strict monitoring system and investment in transportation infrastructure. Phase 3, looking ahead to 2030, envisions completing 1,000 wind turbines with a total capacity of 500 megawatts, enough for Burkina Faso to be self-sufficient and even export energy to neighboring countries. The international impact would be to turn Burkina Faso into a renewable energy hub for West Africa, attracting investment and cooperation from across the continent. To ensure sustainability, the project would be accompanied by a well-trained maintenance program and continuous technological improvement. And the most important thing that made all the difference, it would all be done by the people of Burkina Faso, with the resources and intellect of Burkina Faso. No aid from the World Bank, no loans from the IMF, no dependency on Western technology, no need for foreign experts. And then, on March 15, 2023, the miracle began. March 15, 2023 will be recorded as the day Burkina Faso changed forever. There were no loudspeakers urging people on, no top-down propaganda, no threats or coercion. Just a simple message passed from mouth to mouth, from village to village. Come and help build the energy future for our children. Every pair of hands will help light up Burkina Faso. The people's reaction was immediate and more powerful than even Traoré had imagined. In Ouderland province in the north, over 2,000 people from 50 villages voluntarily joined the first welding training course. They brought basic tools from home and even prepared their own food so as not to burden the project's budget. In the first week, they learned to weld basic joints and fabricate small turbine parts. The immediate result was 500 basically trained welders in just 7 days, filled with excitement and pride to be contributing to building their country. In Soum province in the Sahel region, which has a tradition of ironworking since ancient times, over 1,500 local blacksmiths shared their ancestral secrets to improve the production process. Mamadou Diko, a 45-year-old third-generation blacksmith, said, "My father forged plowshares, I forge farm tools, and now my children will forge wind turbines. This is the greatest honor for our family line." In a moving detail, he donated his family's 100-year-old set of forging hammers to the project, saying, "This is a gift from our ancestors for the future." They overcame the local challenges of extreme heat and water scarcity by working in the early morning and late evening, combined with a rainwater harvesting system. In Yatenga province on the Central Plateau, participation swelled to 3,000 people from 100 villages, forming a massive production community. The unique contribution of this region was its sophisticated pottery and metal casting techniques, which were applied to produce small, precise components for the turbines. Inter-regional coordination was handled via a network of radios and motorcycles, ensuring that information and materials were transported promptly between production sites. What was astonishing wasn't just the scale or speed, but the spontaneous spirit of unity among the people. Fatimata Sawadogo, a 28-year-old primary school teacher in the village of Tanghin, had no technical experience but decided to participate because she wanted her 5-year-old daughter to have electricity to study at night. She spent her entire summer vacation learning to weld, walking 8 kilometers from her home to the training center every day. Her hands were burned many times at first, but after 3 weeks she became proficient and started training other women in her village. Her motivation was simple. "I want my daughter to study under an electric light, not a candle like I did." Her most profound personal feeling was when she recounted, "For the first time in my life, I felt I was not just a consumer, but a producer, a builder of the future." But the wind turbine project wasn't just about emotion or spirit, it was about science, organization, and operational efficiency. The distribution system was organized on a hub-and-spoke model, with 5 main production centers in the provinces, each serving 20 to 30 satellite villages. Raw materials like iron and steel were transported from local mines to the hubs, then distributed to smaller production points. The work was divided by specialty. Villages with a blacksmithing tradition took on the turbine frames, villages with carpenters made the blades, and villages with electricians assembled the electronic systems. Coordination was managed through a network of FM radios and smartphones, with each 100-person group having a coordinator who communicated with the central dispatch. Any plan changes, material requests, or technical issues were reported and resolved within 2 hours. Disagreements were handled through a council of local elders in combination with young engineers, ensuring both tradition and modernity were respected. Simple technology was utilized, including solar battery-powered welders, manual metal cutters, molds made from fired clay, and basic measuring tools. The use of available resources was remarkable, with 100% of the iron ore from the Tambao mine, locally grown eucalyptus wood for the blades, and silicate sand for producing simple electronic components. The most outstanding innovation was the development of a seamless welding technique using solar power, which saved 70% in costs compared to traditional welding. The communication system used local FM radio to broadcast technical instructions every day at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., combined with a smartphone network to share images and video tutorials. Quality assurance was handled through a 3-tier inspection system: self-inspection at the production site, cross-inspection between teams, and a final inspection by engineers at the hub. Each turbine had to pass 15 different inspection steps before being approved. Progress was measured and tracked through a simple mobile app, where each coordinator updated the number of completed parts, their quality, and manpower daily. The data was automatically aggregated and displayed on a central dashboard, allowing for real-time plan adjustments. A feedback and improvement process was implemented through weekly meetings at each center, collecting input from artisans and engineers to continuously refine the process. A specific example from Yako village in Traoré province shows a group of 150 artisans led by 52-year-old Ibrahim completing 12 turbines in the first 4 months. Their process began at 5 a.m. with firing up the forge, followed by forging and welding from 6 to 11 a.m., assembly and inspection from 2 to 5 p.m., and training for new members from 5 to 7 p.m. Their biggest challenge was the lack of experience with high-precision metalwork, which was solved by inviting 3 jewelers from the city to teach sophisticated techniques. Another difficulty, transporting the 2-ton turbines, was solved by building wooden carts with old motorcycle wheels. The measured results after the first 4 months: the number of completed turbines rose from 0 to 45, the quality met 95% of international technical standards, and the production time per unit decreased from 2 weeks to 8 days. Burema shared, "At first, we thought making wind turbines was a job for educated people, but now I understand that skilled hands and dedication are what matter most. Every time I see one of our turbines spinning in the wind, I feel more pride than when my son graduated from university." October 18, 2023, will be remembered in the history of Burkina Faso and perhaps the world. It was the day the first entirely made in Burkina Faso wind turbine was inaugurated and began generating electricity. The event took place on the Sahel Plateau, 200 kilometers north of the capital, in a region once considered a dead land due to its aridity and strong winds. But that very ferocious wind was now becoming a precious energy source for the entire region. The numbers speak for themselves about the incredible scale of this success. The number of completed turbines grew from 0 to 200 in just 8 months, far surpassing the initial 18-month target. The electricity produced reached 120 megawatts, 20% more than the 100 megawatt plan. The actual cost was only $38 million, saving 24% of the planned $50 million budget. The implementation speed was 3 times faster than similar projects using imported technology in Africa. The project not only met, but far exceeded all initial forecasts. The plan was to train 5,000 technicians. In reality, 12,000 people were trained and found stable employment. It was expected to power 500,000 people. In reality, it served 750,000. The goal to save $80 million in energy import costs became $120 million in actual savings. But the most impressive numbers were not the dry statistics, but the change in national spirit and pride. For the first time in modern history, the people of Burkina Faso felt they were not aid recipients, but creators of solutions. The belief in their ability to be self-reliant was restored, completely changing how the people saw themselves and their country's future. At the inauguration ceremony for the first turbine, Ibrahim Traoré shared emotionally, "Today is not just the day we get electricity, it is the day we prove to the world that Burkina Faso does not need saving. We save ourselves and are ready to share our experience with our African brothers. This is just the first step of a larger energy revolution." But this was only the beginning of a larger revolution. Within the first 6 months of the initial turbines operating, visible changes spread across Burkina Faso. Economically, the GDP of provinces with wind turbines grew by an average of 15% year over year, mainly thanks to the growth of small industries and handicrafts with stable electricity. Up to 35,000 new jobs were created. The average income of households in electrified areas increased by 40% due to energy cost savings and production growth. Exports of handicrafts and processed agricultural products grew by 200%. Socially, the rate of children studying at night increased from 30% to 85% as schools got electric lights. The quality of education improved significantly. Health centers could operate 24/7, reducing child mortality by 60%. Security improved markedly with streetlights. Adama Traoré, a 34-year-old farmer, shared, "My family used to spend 50,000 CFA a month on generator fuel. Now it's only 5,000 for grid electricity. With the savings, I bought a water pump for my vegetable garden, and my income has tripled. More importantly, my children can now study at night." Psychologically, the mindset shift was observable as people began proactively proposing other community projects instead of waiting for aid. A new culture, the turbine spirit, was formed, the idea of turning things once considered useless into precious resources. The impact rippled far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. In the region, Ghana, Niger, Mali, and Senegal established programs to learn from the model. The regional balance of power shifted as Burkina Faso transformed from an energy importer to a potential exporter and a hub of expertise. The World Bank had to amend its reports, adding local production to its list of recommended solutions, and the IMF called it a case study worth learning from. The global academic and investment communities took notice. More than 15 studies on the Burkina Faso phenomenon were published, and green investment funds began pouring money into African renewable startups, believing the model could be replicated. The African diaspora responded with deep pride, with remittances increasing by 250% and over 2,000 Burkinabe professionals returning home to contribute. The hashtag #Burkina Faso win trended globally. In an unexpected twist, over 50 universities from the US, Europe, and Asia proposed collaborations to study the appropriate technology model, turning Burkina Faso into a study abroad destination for international engineering students. Dr. James Morrison from MIT shared, "We taught our students that high-tech is the answer to everything." Burkina Faso proved that sometimes appropriate technology combined with local knowledge is the most sustainable solution. We have a lot to learn from them. This is not a short-term success. Traoré has a clear, scientific, long-term vision. Over the next 6 to 12 months, the plan is to build 400 more turbines, bringing the total capacity to 300 megawatts, with the goal of providing electricity to 100% of rural households by the end of 2024 and beginning exports to Mali and Niger. The next 2 to 5 years' ambition is to turn Burkina Faso into the Silicon Valley of renewable energy in Africa, with 1,000 turbines, 500 megawatts of capacity, and the ability to export equipment across the region. The 2030 vision is for Burkina Faso to become the first carbon-negative nation in Africa, a green energy hub attracting $10 billion in FDI, with a high quality of life for its citizens. Most importantly, this model, based on local resources and self-reliance, can be replicated by any community with the right determination. So, what can we learn from the miracle of Burkina Faso? This story teaches us 5 crucial lessons. The first is the power of self-reliance. By refusing dependency, they unlocked immense internal potential. The second is the value of unity. The collective power of 12,000 people working together achieved what no individual could. The third is the importance of a clear vision. A long-term roadmap inspires people to work for a greater good. The fourth is the power of appropriate technology. The best technology is not always the most expensive, but the most suitable and maintainable. The fifth is the importance of determined execution. A good plan, executed with discipline and rigor, can turn an ordinary idea into an extraordinary result. These lessons apply to any community, organization, or individual facing a challenge. The question for each of us is, if 12,000 people in Burkina Faso can build 200 wind turbines and light up a nation, what can you do in your community? Change doesn't need huge budgets. They did it with just $38 million. Change doesn't need permission. They started with their own decision and the people's support. Change doesn't need advanced technology. They used solar-powered welders and traditional forging. Change doesn't need advanced degrees. 80% of the workforce had a basic education and were trained on the job. Change only needs determination and real commitment. It needs to start with small, concrete actions. It needs a spirit of cooperation and sharing. It needs patience and persistence. And it needs a clear vision. The real heroes don't wear capes or have superpowers. They don't need PhDs from Harvard or backing from billionaires. They just need skilled hands, creative minds, loving hearts, and an unshakable belief in their ability to create a better future. They are ordinary people, like us, who dare to act instead of just complaining, who refuse to wait for the perfect opportunity, and who build change themselves, step by step, day by day. Ibrahim Traoré and the 12,000 people of Burkina Faso have proven that nothing is impossible when people are united and determined. They have turned audacious dreams into a living reality, turning wild winds into clean energy, and turning arid land into a symbol of hope. Let us honor the silent heroes of Burkina Faso and remind the world that the real power to change lies not in skyscrapers or international conferences, but in the very hands and hearts of the people. Thank you for taking the time to follow this story. And remember, change starts with you, today, with the smallest decision in your daily life.